Welcome to my Week 2 Top 10 Games of the Week preview video. I'm going to go over the top 10 matchups of this Week 2 of college football. Week 1 was an incredible opening week of college football. So many upsets, so many great matchups. This week doesn't look to be quite as exciting as last week, but any week that college football is on is going to be an exciting week. This is my favorite time of the whole year, basically between August and February timeframe, whenever the bowl games start ending, wrapping up in January. I'm the happiest man on earth. So, outstanding first week of college football. On my previous, last week, of course, I gave my top 10 games of the week. I also give a prediction of each game who I think is going to win. I provide the ESPN percentages, who they think are going to win, the Vegas over-under odds. I also provide top players of each team, or it's not each team, but of each game, the top player of each game to keep an eye on. So last week on my overall, I was 7 for 10. I did pretty well, much better than I thought I would first week after having it's so hard to analyze week 1. You're kind of throwing out wild guesses, and my wild guesses were pretty good. 7 out of 10, better than ESPN, who was 6 out of 10 on the predictions that they'd given, at least percentage-wise. On the over-under, I did much better than I thought I would. I'm 8 out of 10 so far on the over-under. So just kind of looking at last week, what I could have, some games here that I thought I did really well, predicting the Georgia-Clemson game. That was a game I was predicting an upset for Georgia, so well done, Georgia. The UCLA-LSU game, I called that one from the start. I called that in my Pac-12 preview video that UCLA would go and win that one. That was huge. A game that I called in my ACC preview, but then chickened out and switched from my game preview. I'd be sitting at 8 and 10 right now overall if I'd stuck with my preseason preview. I actually said in my preseason preview that, sorry, my battery's dying. On my preseason preview, I actually said that Virginia Tech would beat North Carolina. And then at the last minute, when doing my game preview, or my top 10 games preview, I chickened out and I went with North Carolina. So that was a game that I was off on, but overall, pretty good. So let's get into this week 2 of college football. So we're going to go just like we did last week. The lowest one, 10, the 10th best game, up to the number 1, and then we'll be done at that point. Before I go into that, last week I kept my others that are good to keep an eye on at the end of the video. I'm going to hit those up front right now. South Carolina versus East Carolina did make it into the top 10, but I think it's going to be interesting. Of course, South Carolina starting their game manager graduate assistant at quarterback, who played very well in his first matchup, so that's going to be an interesting one. But South Carolina definitely vulnerable, and East Carolina could definitely go in and upset them there potentially, so that's going to be a good game to keep an eye on. Vanderbilt versus Colorado State, 2 of the bottom tier teams in their conferences, but still a group of 5 versus Power 5. I love seeing upsets, even though Vanderbilt, I wouldn't even consider a high school team beating Vanderbilt to be much of an upset, but I think that it might be an interesting game, especially if you're a Mountain West fan, to keep an eye on that one. And then Liberty versus Troy. Liberty, an under-the-radar team who's going to be very exciting to watch this season. Malik Willis is a Heisman candidate, and Liberty looks to be very, very explosive again this season, beating their last FCS team by a very, very strong margin, despite the fact that they were playing with kind of a partial playbook there. So the Liberty versus Troy match is going to be at that Troy game. I'm going to be driving up to that game. I'm excited for it. So if you're a Troy fan, make sure you keep an eye out for me. I won't be in this gear. I'll be in Liberty gear, but that should be an exciting one. And then Boise State versus UTEP. If you're a Boise State fan, it's going to be exciting. First home opener game to keep an eye on, but just not a big enough matchup as far as UTEP as an opponent to put it under the top 10 there. Okay, but Boise State, always a top team in the group of 5. If you want to go see a good group of 5 team win big at home as a chance on a Friday night where there's not much to watch anyway, go make sure you watch that game. It's going to be at, I believe, 8:30 p.m. Central Time and 9:30 p.m. Eastern Time. All right, so let's get right into that. Number 10 on the list here, we've got New Mexico State versus New Mexico. 0-2 New Mexico versus 1-0 so far New Mexico. Generally, a matchup between these 2 programs that anyone else would never make it into the top 10. But this week doesn't have a ton of top-tier matchups, at least until you get into the top 5 of my list here. And New Mexico State, New Mexico is an in-state rivalry, so they sneak into the top 10 here. ESPN's giving them an 83.9% chance, New Mexico that is, giving them an 83.9% chance of winning. And the Vegas odds on that are 19 over. So they think, so not over, sorry. New Mexico winning by 19 in that game. 7 p.m. kickoff Eastern Time. I could not find the streaming information. It's probably on one of the school's websites. But the player to watch on this one is going to be New Mexico Manny Logan Green. kick return specialist who's had 3 returns so far for an average of, in the last game, their FCS opponent that New Mexico played. He's a New Mexico player who had 3 returns for an average of 33 and a long of 39, and he had a punt return for 32 yards. So again, not a huge matchup to watch New Mexico versus New Mexico State, but I love rivalries of any kind, and in-state rivalries are awesome to watch, regardless of who's playing them. And considering that both of these teams are probably two of the lowest tier teams in college football this season, it's always fun to watch a battle of the bottom dogs, bottom tier teams. So it's always interesting to see who can fail the least and end up winning the game. So make sure that, if you got nothing on at 7 p.m. there, make sure you watch this game. This is the week of the late night stretch. There is a ton of great games that are past 7 p.m. this week. Most of the games in this top 10 matchup are falling into that category. Some really, really great games to watch. So make sure that you drink a lot of coffee, maybe sleep in a little bit in the morning here, because you're not going to want to go to sleep this Saturday college football. It's going to be an exciting late night stretch of games, even though the earlier stretch of games aren't quite as good. Hey, number 9 on this list, Hawaii versus at Oregon State, 11 p.m. Eastern time on FS1. I warned you these were late night games. Hawaii is the underdog in this one. Oregon State is favored 83.4% chance by ESPN, and Vegas odds are giving them an 11-point victory. Player to watch in this one, the quarterback for Hawaii, Shaven Cordero, 525 yards passing so far, 4 touchdowns. A very exciting, explosive player. Maybe not quite the same amount of skill level as McDonald, the previous Hawaii quarterback, but still an exciting quarterback to watch, and a quarterback who has a lot of talent and potential. They played not as well as they should have done against UCLA, though UCLA is turning out to look like a better team than people potentially were thinking going in. But I think that this is a upset potential here. Oh, I just realized I didn't give you my prediction for the New Mexico game. See, it's such a small game, I'm not even thinking about it. I'm predicting New Mexico winning versus New Mexico State, and under on the over-under. I think it'll be less than 19-point victory. New Mexico never ends up being able to pull it off big like they're supposed to, and they almost lost to an FCS opponent last week. Okay, so sorry, back to the Hawaii-Oregon State game. So I think that this is upset potential here. I think that Oregon State is not a very good football team, again in the Pac-12, lower tier in that conference, if not the worst team in that conference. So I think Arizona is probably going to be worse this year. But I think Hawaii can win this game. So I'm going to go with Hawaii in this matchup, and I'm going to go under on the over-under here. I think that it will be closer game than 11 points, maybe come down to 7 or 10 point spread here. But I do think it'll be under, and I think Hawaii will win this matchup. All right, number 8 on this list. So we've gone through number 10, New Mexico State versus New Mexico. Number 9, Hawaii versus Oregon State. Number 8, San Diego State versus Arizona. San Diego State 1-0 so far. Arizona 0-1 after losing to BYU last week. Arizona, it's going to be a close game according to ESPN and Vegas. Arizona only favored by 50.2%, and Vegas is only giving them a 2-point spread here with Arizona favored. So you definitely want to put money on this game because Arizona is only favored by 2. No team ever wins by 2. It's definitely going to be over. So I'm definitely calling over on this one before I even get to the score prediction. Regardless of who wins this game, it's going to be more than 2. So this one, it's kind of interesting that Vegas would give that chance there for so many people to make money. You're not going to make much money, but you're definitely going to be able to make something on this one because it's not going to come down to a safety. I don't remember the last game that came down to a safety. A lot of games do come down to 1 point or something like that. But it's rare for that to happen. I think this is going to be at least a field goal, if not more, victory. I am calling San Diego State in this one. San Diego State is a good team out of the Mountain West, even though they are doing kind of another rebuild season under Rocky Long. But they is... I'm going to have to check that actually, make sure that, because I make all these mistakes sometimes in the videos, and then fans, especially San Diego State fans, will come back and correct you and say, oh man, I can't believe you said that he was coaching there. Sorry, Brady Hoke. I knew I had the wrong coach in my head. Rocky Long, previous coach at San Diego State, but Brady Hoke is the coach here at San Diego State right now. I apologize for that. So Brady Hoke, the coach at San Diego State, kind of still doing a rebuild here, but I think they are talented enough to go out and beat Arizona, who has not looked good over the last couple of seasons, even though they played BYU pretty well last week. I do think that San Diego State can go out and get this win. The top player in this matchup is a running back for San Diego State, Greg Bell, who had over 160 yards rushing last week and a touchdown. So even though it was against New Mexico State, this is a San Diego State team that has the talent to go out and beat a Pac-12 team like Arizona, and I think they can do it. All right, number 7 on the list, Appalachian State, 1-0, going up against number 22, 0-1 Miami. This is kind of getting into the first really good games of the week here because it's a 7 p.m. matchup on ESPNU. I apologize. I'm all over the place. The last game, San Diego State versus Arizona, is 10 p.m. on the Pac-12 network. Anyhow, so 7 p.m. on ESPNU. The top players for this one, I mean, I know Derek King is all the rage. That's what everyone's thinking about. Got a huge endorsement deal with NIL. But quarterback for Appalachian State, Chase Bryce, he's a former quarterback for Clemson. He had over 1,000 yards passing in his freshman and sophomore year there at Clemson. And then he was a starting quarterback at Duke, where he passed for over 2,000 yards passing. And he already in his first game playing East Carolina has over 250 yards passing at 259, 2 touchdowns, and an interception. He is a talented quarterback. He's a Power 5 level quarterback. That's what he was recruited into. That's what he played at. He has the know-how. He has the awareness. This is a good quarterback, and it's a good Appalachian State team. Appalachian State out of the Sun Belt has been good for several years now. They're a team that they're not going out necessarily and winning the New Year's Six bowl games, but they're a very good team. And Miami got destroyed last week versus Alabama. Miami is favored pretty big in this one. They have a 74% chance of winning according to ESPN, and Vegas is giving them 9-point spread, which isn't that big considering that it's ACC team Miami versus Appalachian State. And I think that Chase Bryce is good enough to go out and give Miami another beatdown. Not beatdown, but to go out and beat Miami. Miami coming off a beatdown versus Alabama. They're demotivated right now. They got absolutely crushed. Alabama exposed a lot of weaknesses. Appalachian State isn't any Alabama, but they are a motivated Sun Belt team wanting to come up and prove themselves against a quality Power 5 opponent here. And I also think that Miami's a little bit overhyped for what they are this season. Even though Derek King is good, I think there's a lot of weaknesses on that team. So I think Appalachian State, I'm calling it upset here. I think it's going to be under on the over-under. And I think that Appalachian State is going to be able to pull out a victory here in a very close game. This one, the first of the kind of later games, but still early enough on the East Coast that, it won't be past most of your bedtimes. So 7 p.m. ESPNU, you're going to want to catch this game. It's going to be I think it can be very, very good. So that's why I'm calling that upset right there. I am putting you, Miami, number 22, on upset alert. I need to get like a siren to go. All right, Miami, you're on upset alert here. Okay, sixth game here, sixth best game of the week. We have number 8, 1-0 Notre Dame versus 1-0 Toledo. This is game at 2:30 p.m. on Peacock, so you're going to have to sign up for a free 1-month subscription if you want to watch this game. Notre Dame is favored by 89.5%, and they're given a spread of 17 points. Now, I think that's pretty large, considering the fact that they almost lost to Florida State, and this is not a Florida State team that's back. This is a Florida State team that's still not very good, who almost beat Notre Dame. Now, first game jitters has a lot to do with that. Playing on a Sunday night after having watched so many other teams play, you come out there, they're the only game of the week. There's a lot of pressure on both teams there, and Florida State's always easier to play from the underdog at home in front of that awesome crowd that was just going at it all game long. It was almost annoying how passionate they were because it was just the same chant the entire game. But Notre Dame should have played better than they did in that one. So I think this is going to be a closer game than the analysts are predicting. I'm not putting Notre Dame on upset alert. I think Notre Dame can win this game. And I think that their quarterback, Jack Cohen, there threw for 366 yards and 4 touchdowns and a pick last week. I apologize for that. Last week is going to play well in this one, but I do think it's going to be closer. Toledo, a good team out of the MAC. I'm predicting them to win the MAC this year. I think that they're going to hold it close. I think they're going to keep it maybe for 3 quarters here before Notre Dame pulls away, but I do think that it's going to be under on that 17-point spread. So picking Notre Dame, but under on the over-under. All right, 5th game. So we're into the top 5 now. We have number 14, 1-0 USC versus 0-1 Stanford. Now, typically, number 14 USC versus not a very good Stanford. If it was any other team, this would not be a top 5 matchup. But this is a rivalry game. The teams have played each other 95 times over their entire history. This is a rivalry with a long legacy. Of course, both California teams there. This is a late game, 10:30 p.m. on Fox. And USC owns the rivalry so far 62-33, and they won last time they played in 2019. So Stanford is going to be motivated to come in here and get a win. They're going to want to come in here and beat a USC team that didn't look great. They beat San Jose State by a good margin. I believe it was 33-7. They beat them by a good margin, but they didn't crush them like they should have, considering that USC wants to be a team that goes out and competes for national championships. So I think it's going to be a good game. I am going to say, so ESPN is giving USC an 85.3% chance of winning. I'm going to side with ESPN on this one. I do think USC will win this game. But Vegas is saying a 17-point beatdown, a 17-point drubbing of Stanford. I don't think it's going to be that much. I think it's going to be closer than that. Even though Stanford, if USC was playing any other team of Stanford's quality or caliber, I think they would beat them by that much. But the fact that this is a rivalry game, I think that they're going to hold in there. Caden Slovis for USC looks really good. 256 yards passing and 2 touchdowns last week against San Jose State. So I think that is going to be a win for USC, but I'm going to call under on the over-under here. All right, number 4. So number 4, we're inside of the top 4 now. Number 21, Utah, 1-0 versus 1-0 BYU. I really thought BYU should have got ranked. Even though they didn't play great against Arizona, they got the win against Arizona. I think they should have, the caliber team that BYU is this year going against Arizona, I think they should have beaten them by 3 touchdowns. They didn't. It was a closer game, but BYU stuck in there. A lot of people were saying, analysts, fans, everything. I'm on a couple of pages that talk about BYU football, and a lot of analysts were saying that it looked like BYU was holding themselves back for this big matchup against against Utah. They knew that they could beat Arizona. They knew they were a better team than them, so it looked like, a lot of analysts were saying that it looked like they were kind of truncating their playbook to try and hide some tape from Utah so they can go out and surprise them this week. So Utah is favored by this in this matchup 60.7%, and they got a 7-point spread against BYU. But BYU's running back Tyler Aguero looks really, really good. He looked really good last season when he rushed for over 1,000 yards. He's a running back that can go out there and get you there. He's a running back who can take over a game. I mean, against Boise State, he had over 120 yards last season. He's a running back who can go out there. He pounds it up the middle. He pounds it outside, and he averages over 7.2 yards per carry for his career and 5.5 yards per carry so far this season. So he's a quarterback with top-end speed. He can break through tackles. I think that towards the end of the season, you're going to be looking at this guy as one of the top running backs in the country. This BYU has always been good at getting those great running backs under in their stable, and they have another great one here. Another player to watch in this game because it's such a good game. It's a rivalry game. I'm going to give 2 players of the week for this team. Charlie Brewer, quarterback for Utah, also looks good. 233 yards. Of course, the transfer from Baylor there. I liked watching him at Baylor. I thought he had a lot to bring to the table. I think Utah is a contender for that Pac-12 crown this season. But I am calling the upset here. I'm putting Utah, number 21 Utah. I'm putting you on upset alert. So far we got Miami and Utah on upset alert. Where are the sirens? Bam, 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 bam. There we go. You're on upset alert, Utah. I think BYU has it in them to win this game. I think that they have the talent on their roster. I was rooting for Romney to be the leader of this team, to take the starting role. But you know what? I think that they made a right call with going with Jalen Hall. Jaron Hall, sorry. I was trying to get the first name there. I knew Hall was the last one, but I was trying to get the first one name there. Sorry, going with Jaron Hall here because he played really, really well last week. He didn't play as well as a lot of fans were hoping him to, but like I said, playing on a reduced playbook, playing in a quarterback who's really kind of, coming in here and having to take over from a great quarterback like Zach Wilson. He showed a lot more talent and poise than I was expecting him to. Even though I was a big Romney fan, I think that Hall played really, really well. So I think that he's going to surprise a lot of people here in a good game against Utah. I'm expecting big things. I think that Alligator will be the star of the game for BYU there. I think he's going to be leaned on heavily. But I think that Hall's going to do some great things here too. And I think that BYU can pull out the win. So that's the late game, 10:15 p.m. Eastern. But you're going to want to stay up for that one because it's going to be really, really good. All right, number 3 matchup here. Number 10, 1-0 Iowa versus number 9, 1-0 Iowa State. Top 10 matchup, gotta put it in the top 20. Gotta put it in my top 5 here for the 4 top games of the week. Iowa, of course, having that huge win against Indiana last week. A good Indiana team, I think, that they ended up crushing. And Iowa State, a team that struggled against FCS opponent Northern Iowa. So you're kind of two scales here. You have a team in Iowa who surprised a lot of people by crushing their week one opponent. And you have a team like Iowa State who a lot of people were very, very big on coming into the season, struggling to win a close game against an FCS team. Coming into this game, I would have said Iowa State was going to win this. And that's what ESPN is saying, 56.7% chance of Iowa State winning. And Vegas is giving them 4.5 odds. Sorry, I forgot to do the over-under on BYU. I'm going to call over on the over-under. I think it's going to be more than a 7-point victory. So back to this one anyhow. Iowa State, 4.5 odds. That's where they're calling for the win here by Iowa State. What Vegas and ESPN are both calling for. But I don't think that's the case. Iowa State, they should not have struggled the way they did against FCS opponent. I know that that team has had their number in the past. I know that that team has come close to beating them, and it's been close games, kind of an in-state rivalry kind of thing. I know that. But Iowa State, if they think that they're on track to be a top team in the Big 12, not just the Big 12, but the country, they think that they're a playoff level type team. And I did not see that out of them. Iowa State, if they want to be that team, they don't have excuses for almost losing to lower caliber opponents like that. On the other hand, I saw Iowa destroy at Indiana, and their top player for Iowa actually is a defensive player. First defensive player I've listed as a top player so far. Defensive back Riley Moss, 2 interceptions for 85 yards and 2 touchdowns. He had 2 touchdowns out of those interceptions. Incredible game for him. He also had 2 passes defended. So Iowa, they're coming in with a good offense, a really good defense, and I think that they pull off the upset here. Not upset alert because it's a number 10 team versus number 9 team, pretty closely matched. But I do think that they pull off the odds against what everyone else is saying about them. I think that this Big 10 team comes in here and beats an Iowa State team, which is another blow for the Big 12 after struggling last week. Oklahoma barely beating Tulane, and Iowa State barely beating their opponent. I think it's going to be another rough week for the Big 12 here as Iowa comes in and beats one of their top tier, one of their potential playoff contenders in Iowa State. All right, number 2. All right, we're down to the final 2 here. Number 2, 1-0 Air Force at 0-1 Navy. The Air Force-Navy rivalry game. I love this matchup every single year. My favorite's the Air Force-Army game, but I love any of the service games. They always play it close, always play it tight. Of course, last season, Air Force, I believe, you know what, I should have gotten this here already before we started. Getting a big win against against Navy, though they dropped the game to Army. So they want to build off of that success. Air Force looking like a very much better team than Navy in this one. Air Force is the favorite, 67.7%. Air Force is 5.5 spread according to the Vegas odds. And I did it again. Iowa, I'm picking Iowa in the last matchup. I think it's going to be over on the over-under for Iowa. Dang, I got to stop doing that. Anyhow, Air Force versus Navy. The odds 5.5 in favor of Air Force. Quarterback Hezek Daniels really trying to pick up for Donald Hammond, of course, who was dismissed from the program a couple seasons ago, or last year actually. And so Hezek Daniels trying to pick up the pace and trying to be that next quarterback, and he played well last week against an FCS opponent. 3 of 5 for 50 yards, so not quite the arm of Hammond, though he does have throwing capability, though it just hasn't come out yet. But he rushed for 72 yards and 3 touchdowns. I think we're going to see a big step forward versus Navy. I'm excited to see what he can do. This is going to be a big step for Air Force in getting that Commanders and Chiefs trophy, of course. And it's going to be a big step overall for Air Force trying to prove that they are not only a contender for that Commanders Chiefs trophy, but that they're a contender for the Mountain West. I'm expecting a big win here by Air Force over Navy. Last season, they played great despite the fact, they went 3-3 last year, and they were playing with basically one set of players. They didn't have one string of players because a lot of their second and third string players they'd sent home. They were playing with a skeleton roster due to the COVID protocols and circumstances around, and they were playing with a skeleton roster, and they still looked good. And I think they were going to see more of the same this year, where they look good and even better with a full team around them. I think they go out and win against Navy here. So go Air Force, beat Navy. That's so I have my 3 teams: Boise State, Liberty, and Air Force. Big fans of all 3 of them, so definitely go Air Force, beat Navy. All right, the number 1 matchup, the one you've all been waiting for. It comes down to this. This is the number 1 matchup of the week, and it's not a surprise again. Number 12, Oregon, 1-0 so far with a close win against Fresno State against number 3, Ohio State, 1-0, who had a interesting game against Minnesota, ended up winning by 2 possessions there, but was still closer than I think a lot of fans were hoping. So it's going to be 2 teams that didn't necessarily perform as expected coming into this one. Ohio State favored big in this, 87.8% chance of winning, and a 14-point spread by the Vegas pollsters here. C.J. Stroud for Ohio State is my quarterback, is my top player of this game. 294 yards passing, 4 touchdowns, and 1 interception. If some of you might have remembered from my Pac-12 preview and from my Big Ten preview that I said in that I thought Oregon was going to go win this game against Ohio State. After seeing Oregon play against Fresno State, who, don't get me wrong, is a good team out of the Mountain West, but they're not. Fresno State is not an Ohio State. And the way that Oregon struggled to move the ball or do anything offensively, they're really struggling to find themselves their quarterback. I believe their quarterback had under 150 yards passing. They're really struggling to find themselves here, and Ohio State is going to present a much tougher matchup than Fresno State. Though Fresno State is a good team, they look like a top 25 team at some point this season. I'm excited to see what they can do this year. But Ohio State's going to offer a much stronger test than Fresno State. I do think this is going to be a loss. Vegas is predicting a 14-point spread. I think that's fair. I'm not calling over-under on this one. I'm actually calling stay. I'm calling 14-point win. I think that sounds good, pretty good by Ohio State. I think that this is a team that, if they perform to get better against Minnesota, I'd probably be calling over. And if Oregon performed better against Fresno State, I'd probably be calling under. But really, with first week performance of both these teams, I'm saying stay is pretty much good on this one. I think 14-point spread is good enough on this. All right, so your upset alert teams are my number 22 Miami and number 21 Utah. I think it's going to be another fantastic week of college football. I'm very, very excited for it, as always. So if you like this video, make sure you like and subscribe. I do a lot of Boise State stuff, but I am also doing pretty much the same amount of general college football this year as well, trying to expand and broaden out. And I'm hoping that I can keep my spread here. 7-10 last week was pretty good. I'm hoping I can do better this week. I'm calling for a lot of upsets. It's going to be another exciting week of college football. Make sure you're tuning in and make sure you're staying up late, because there's a lot of good ones once the sun goes down. All right, thank you so much for watching this video. As always, go Big Blue.